you want to know the technicalities of how to quench a knife properly, there it is. Because I've just been teaching it to Vince here. Now that is a very, very high-tech setup of how we heat treat our knife blades. Right, day 2. We are going to fit handles to our knives. Have you got a knife?
Yes.
You lost it? No?
No.
Right, okay. Now the easiest thing to do, and it's the most simple thing to do, is to make either 2 left hand or 2 right hand handle scales. The most difficult thing to do is get 1 left hand and 1 right hand, and keep them as left hand and right hand. So I've invented my own little system to make sure that we get them right. It's convention, that's the word I'm looking for. Hold the blade sharp edge upwards, pointing away from you. You got left hand, you got a right hand. That's how I do it. Right. You put a piece on each side, the left hand, you just write on it. Left hand, right hand. Okay? Don't write on the inside because you're going to sand the inside. So I put them down and open them out so I know where they go. On our blade, we know that from that hole we're going to be about 20 mm further forward. I'm just sketching on there roughly where the front of my handle is going, the scale is going to come. Now I'm going to sit the blade and ensure that no part of the handle extends over the edge of my handle scale. So I'm a little bit tight at the front there, but that's okay. I can trim it now. But I know that when I drill those holes on in there, it's going to fit. I just mark around the edge. Now, when I come to do the other one, remember, I've got a left hand, I've got a right hand. I've got to turn it over. So that I now mark the same shape on the other handle scale. So again, because I'm a bit short of length with mine, I've made the handle a bit long. I'll make sure I'm just on the inside at the back there, and just mark up the outside. Okay, so you need to do exactly the same with yours. Start. So what we've got to do now, in order to do that, we need some holes in them. When we glue those onto the handle, this face has got to be finished. Because when that is now up against the blade of the knife, we cannot clean that front face. So we've got to get both front faces finished, and when they pin on, and we look at the bottom, we don't want one sitting forward from the other like that. They both got to be in exactly the same place. So we've got the pins in, that's locking that scale into exactly the right position relative to the blade of the handle. Now where my line comes round there, it's coming round there in a curve. From the end of the line on the blade, I'm continuing the line in the same sort of curve as I've already got marked on the handle. And I'm doing the same the other side. From the end there, I'm bringing him out at the right sort of angle that it finishes on the blade. I remove the 2 pins, and now I've got to fill in the front. Now I'm a little bit tight there, you can see. So I've got to make sure that I stay within the scale itself. So I'm going to sketch that curve around there, bring it back a little bit more than what I've marked on the handle, so that I can get the right sort of curve on the front of the blade. So now I can go and grind that round to shape. And then I can fit the other scale to it, and I'll make that one into, so we get a matched pair. Now put your 2 scales together.
Yeah.
That doesn't look right because I can see drawings of a scale. So you're going to make 2 right hands or 2 left hands there. Now you've got the 2 outsides together, you want the 2 insides together.
So, should we like that? Yes. Yeah.
One thing people have to understand when they come on this course, if you make a serious lash up, you will be verbally abused. And you are right on the borderline of some verbal abuse here. That's it.
That
Johnny,
would have been fun.
Back, yeah. Now, you can go back onto the table, just follow that line round. So now we're going to go and grind the front of these two, so they're both exactly the same. They've got a nice laid back angle on them. So we're moving down to the disc grinder. That's the sum total of all your excitement on the bandsaw today. Now, because I didn't have much to take off, I haven't been down on the bandsaw, so I'm just going to take this corner off and get roughly down to my black line, which is on there. I'm working with Kirinite, which is acrylic, so I'm going nice and slow, otherwise I'll start melting it. So that's it. As you can see, actually, this one's got the table set at 15. All these discs have got the wheels, the table set at 15 degrees. That's just to give a little slope back on the front of the handle scale. I just think it looks a little bit nicer. So all I've done is roughed out there. I've got the shape where I want it. So I'm going to put the two scales together and make the second one exactly the same. I've got it, so I'm just about got that angle, so it's meeting the other one roughly on the join line there. So that's a 60 grit paper. That's very rough. What we want to do now is finish both of these down to about 400 grit, then we can buff them. That's then polished, finished, we don't have to work on them anymore. So, very nice little machine here. I'll just swap around. I've got a 60 grit this end, I've got 120 grit that end. So I'm going to come down now to 120 grit and do exactly the same, just cleaning up the finish a little bit better. Just starting to come over the join line to the other side. That means I've completely cleaned this one up. So I'll swap the pins over. That's it. Let's take it down to 120 grit. Now we're going to go down to the next machine and we can do 220 grit and 400. So you can see there where I've done one side down to 220, starting to get a better finish, scratches are starting to get finer. So now I'm going to do the second side, and again I want the two angles to meet at the join between the two pieces of Kirinite there. Now remember, we've finished this front face, so we want a nice sharp corner. This corner here wants to sit neatly down onto the flat surface we've made on the blade. We're not worried about any other edge because they've still got to be trimmed after it's glued on. But this one is going to go on there, it's going to stay on there. So I'm going to hold it onto the wheel, but I'm going to make sure the wheel is going that way so it's coming onto that cut face. And it's not bringing a burr around this corner, it's cutting into it and it will leave a nice clean corner. And I very gently touch it onto the wheel, and when I feel it's on flat, I add a little bit of pressure and I check on the back. You can see it's cleaning up most of it, just one little bit, there's obviously a low spot there. So I'll go back and I'll put a little bit of extra pressure with that top left hand thumb. And that's it, that's completely cleaned that face. So that means that's going to glue on nicely. Do exactly the same with the other one. That's it now, completely clean, sanded surface. Both of them perfectly flat. And the 120 grit is about the ideal size for epoxy to stick to. Doesn't like it too rough, it doesn't like it too fine. Anywhere between, they say 120 grit and 200 grit gives you the right surface texture to get the best bond with your epoxy. Right, okay, so we're now ready to put our knife scales onto the handle. We've just spent quite a bit of time making the front face exactly as we want them. So what we want to do is make sure that we don't put our dirty, grubby hand marks and mess up the look of that front face. So we're going to keep them nice and clean. So all we're going to do is stick some masking tape on there just to make sure that we don't get any glue going into that clean wood, finger marks or anything mucky. Pull off a piece of masking tape, glue it so that we cover the whole of that face and really press it down, rub it in with a fingernail. Take a utility knife, just clean off the masking tape. Do it on the other one as well. go. So now it becomes even more important that you know your left from your right. I know this because I don't know my left from my right. So I've got a right hand scale and I marked it on the outside. I've got a left hand scale, it's marked on the outside. Hopefully my knife will drop in the middle and everything will line up. Put them down, open up, put those two together. So I'm going to glue those two together first. I'm going to turn my knife back over, so I know I'm going to glue that side, I'm going to glue here, and when I put it together it's going to be the right way round. This face of the handle is, we know it's nice and flat from the grinding we did yesterday, but we need to scratch that surface in order to get the glue to stick. Take a little piece of sandpaper. I must admit this Norton stuff on the roll is very handy. And you want a little piece. Fold him in half. So I'm just going to stop 8 millimeters before I get to that line. And just scratch that surface with the paper, not coming over the line. And I put my thumb there to stop me coming up too far. Give it a quick rub. It hasn't got to be made shiny or spotless. It just needs scratch marks to go through the scale on the surface so the glue's got something to stick to. And that is enough. So that is now ready to be glued together. You need to prepare yours and then we can glue. And then you're ready to glue. So we just squeeze out a little bit of each. This is 5-minute epoxy. Mix them up. These are just cocktail sticks, I just find them handy. The secret is just to really mix that well. Okay, so Vince, you're gluing yours at the same time. There's your stick.
Thank you.
So all it is a case, you glue both surfaces and make sure you've got a smear of glue on. But just make sure, don't have to put too much on there. So I'm going to scrape all that off again now. It's all nice and clear, that's plenty. I'll do exactly the same on the knife. A piece of paper with acetone on and clean that front face up. And clean any glue that's in that joint there because it's not easy to get it out afterwards. Now lay your knife on the table with your two pins sticking upwards, the handles of your pins sticking. Lay it down on the bench. Now very carefully twist, very gently, pull those pins out so the scale and the blade between each other don't move. Just lift the pins out, like so. Now just don't touch the knife, leave it to set. Let that glue go off and just wipe the glue off your pins. So this is just starting to thicken now, okay? When it thickens a bit more, I'll show you a little trick that I use. If I touch it now, you can see it's still very sticky. Put my finger on and it is up. Now if I can push my finger into that hard and lift it and the plate stays on the table, then I know that I can quite safely take that clamp off. Don't take the clamp off as soon as you see this going rubbery, because the odds are that in that actual joint there it's still going to be quite liquid. That's just a little trick, like all the others. I've learnt them the hard way, and then I'll do it again just to prove it was wrong. And then I usually do it a third time to make absolutely certain it's a problem. And after that I tend to learn. Okay. So now this is probably one of the few jobs that's worse than watching paint dry and watching the grass grow. Just wait for your epoxy to go off. It's always a good time for another cup of coffee though.
You want me to put it in the microwave?
Yeah, I haven't drunk the last one. I'm going to reheat the last one. Okay, so I'm just going to check that our glue has gone off. That's just about falling off my finger comfortably. Even around the edge. At the edge here the glue is much thinner, so therefore it will have generated less heat and it takes longer to cure. But yeah, and yeah, that's stuck nice and firmly. So if you remember, when we put these scales together we only drilled 2 holes, because I reckon that if you drill the third one it's probably not going to line up. So what we have to do now is, there's no point sticking the other scale on the other side, because now there's no chance of finding that hole in the steel. So we're going to drill this one through. We're also going to run the drill through the 2 existing holes. That's just to clean out any epoxy that's gone into those holes, because we're going to use the same holes to put the pins through, so the pin won't go in at all. We're going to put the pins through from that side to locate the other scale in exactly the right place, so that these front edges line up correctly. That's it. So this time, while we're waiting for the glue to dry, we're going to prepare our pins that we're going to put through. I prefer to use bronze rather than brass. I just like the colour of the bronze better. It's a richer, redder colour. So a quick check, my pins need to be minimum of 20mm in order to go through my handle. If I check on Vince's, it's about the same. So if I cut the pins 25mm long, then we're going to have a little bit of spare that we can grind off and make a nice thread. Let's take a nice fresh piece. Wrap it round. And that's it. This time there's no cleaning up, just leaving it to dry. We want to reduce the thickness of the scale to about half. Halfway through that pin to the bottom of that pin, get different grade. So we're going to start with 220 because we've been sanding around there on the belt. Going until we see the burr coming up.